What if your gray hair was not inevitable, but a symptom? A symptom of one specific vitamin deficiency that the majority of women over 60 have right now and do not know about. Not because they're eating badly, but because after 60, the aging body absorbs this vitamin at a fraction of the efficiency it once did, and nobody told them. I am a dermatologist, and I'm going to say something that most doctors never take the time to explain. Gray hair is not just genetics. It is not just aging. It is a measurable biological event happening inside your hair follicles. A specific cellular failure driven by hydrogen peroxide accumulation that quietly bleaches your melanocytes from the inside out. And science has now identified the exact vitamin that stops that process. Most women who try this vitamin see no results, not because it does not work, because they are taking the wrong form in the wrong way. And that one mistake makes it almost completely useless. In this video, I am going to give you the right form, the right dose, the right delivery method, and the 2 companion nutrients that multiply its effect on your follicles in a way that single nutrient supplementation never can. Stay until the very end, because the last thing I reveal is the one daily habit that is silently accelerating your gray hair faster than any deficiency. And most women over 60 do it every single morning without realizing it. Let us get into it. Most people think gray hair is simply hair without color, like the pigment faded out the way a photograph fades in the sun. That is not what happens. Your hair gets its color from pigment cells called melanocytes. These are the same cells responsible for skin pigmentation. They live inside your hair follicles at the base of each strand, and every time your hair grows a new cycle, these melanocytes inject a pigment called melanin into the new hair cells as they form. That melanin determines your hair color. Dark melanin produces black or brown hair. Yellow melanin produces blonde hair. The ratio and type of melanin your melanocytes produce determines every shade in between. When your hair turns gray, it means one specific thing. The melanocytes inside your hair follicles have stopped producing melanin. They have not died in most cases. They have simply stopped functioning. They are present in the follicle. They are alive, but they have shut down the pigment production process. And the question that took science decades to answer is why? The answer turned out to be hydrogen peroxide. Your body naturally produces small amounts of hydrogen peroxide as a byproduct of normal cellular metabolism. In young healthy cells, this hydrogen peroxide is broken down almost immediately by an enzyme called catalase. Catalase converts the hydrogen peroxide into water and oxygen before it can cause any cellular damage. The process happens continuously and efficiently, and you never notice it. But here's what happens as you age. Catalase production declines significantly. After 60, many people produce catalase at a fraction of the levels they maintained at 30. And as catalase levels fall, hydrogen peroxide begins to accumulate inside the cells, including inside the melanocytes in your hair follicles. The accumulated hydrogen peroxide bleaches the melanin from the inside. It also damages the melanocyte cells themselves and disrupts the enzymatic machinery they use to produce new melanin. The result is gray hair, not from the outside, from the inside, a slow internal bleaching process driven by hydrogen peroxide accumulation in cells that no longer have adequate catalase to neutralize it. This is the mechanism, and this is why vitamin B12 matters more than any other single nutrient for gray hair after 60. Vitamin B12 is essential for the production and maintenance of the myelin sheath around nerve cells. It is critical for red blood cell formation. It supports DNA synthesis, and it is one of the primary regulators of a biochemical cycle called the methionine cycle that your body uses to manage oxidative stress at the cellular level. That last function is where B12 connects directly to gray hair. The methionine cycle produces a compound called glutathione. Glutathione is the body's most powerful internal antioxidant, and one of its primary jobs is to support catalase activity, the enzyme that breaks down hydrogen peroxide in your cells. When B12 levels are adequate, the methionine cycle runs efficiently. Glutathione production stays high, catalase activity is supported, and hydrogen peroxide is neutralized before it can accumulate in your melanocytes. When B12 levels are deficient, the methionine cycle slows. Glutathione production drops, catalase activity declines, hydrogen peroxide accumulates and your melanocytes begin to shut down. A 2009 study published in the journal Experimental Dermatology specifically examined the relationship between B12 deficiency and premature hair graying and found a statistically significant association between low B12 status and accelerated melanocyte dysfunction. Multiple follow-up studies have confirmed that correcting B12 deficiency in individuals with low levels produced measurable improvements in melanocyte function, and in some cases, a partial reversal of gray hair pigmentation in women who had been gray for less than 5 years. Partial reversal of gray hair with a vitamin. I want to be precise here because I do not want to overclaim what the science shows. The research does not suggest that B12 supplementation turns a full head of white hair jet black in 2 months. What it shows is that in women whose gray hair is driven or accelerated by B12 deficiency, which after 60 is the majority of women experiencing accelerated graying. Correcting that deficiency gives the melanocytes the biochemical environment they need to resume partial pigment production. The results are most significant in women who have been graying for 5 years or less, and the results are visible most clearly at the roots as new hair grows in with gradually more color than the hair that preceded it. Now, stay with me because this is where most people make the critical mistake that keeps B12 from working for them. There are 5 forms of B12 available. Most supplements use the cheapest one, and that form is the one your body absorbs least efficiently, especially after 60. I'm going to tell you exactly which form to use, exactly how much, and exactly how to take it so it actually reaches your hair follicles. Keep watching. Here is the problem that makes gray hair B12 advice so frustrating for most women. You can take B12 every single day and still be severely deficient, not because you were taking the wrong amount, because your body has lost the ability to absorb it properly. B12 absorption requires a protein called intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor is produced in the stomach lining, and it binds to B12 from food and supplements and escorts it through the intestinal wall into the bloodstream. Without intrinsic factor, B12 cannot be absorbed through the normal digestive pathway, regardless of how much you consume. After 60, intrinsic factor production declines significantly in most people. The stomach lining produces less of it, and the B12 you swallow in a standard oral supplement largely passes through your digestive system without being absorbed. Studies estimate that adults over 60 absorb as little as 10 to 30% of the B12 in standard oral cyanocobalamin supplements, the form most supplements use, the cheapest form, the one with the worst absorption profile. This is why so many women try B12 for months and see nothing. They are not absorbing what they are taking. The solution has 2 parts. The first part is the form of B12. You need methylcobalamin, not cyanocobalamin. Methylcobalamin is the biologically active form of B12. It does not require conversion by the liver before it can be used by cells. It crosses the blood-brain barrier more efficiently. It is retained in tissues at higher concentrations, and multiple comparative studies have shown it produces significantly higher plasma B12 levels than equivalent doses of cyanocobalamin in adults with compromised intrinsic factor production. Check your current B12 supplement right now. If the label says cyanocobalamin, switch immediately to methylcobalamin. This one change alone can transform the results you see from B12 supplementation. The second part is the delivery method because even methylcobalamin taken as a standard swallowed tablet still passes through the stomach where intrinsic factor deficiency limits absorption. The solution is sublingual delivery. Sublingual means under the tongue. Sublingual B12 tablets or liquid drops placed under the tongue are absorbed directly through the mucous membrane to the bloodstream. They bypass the stomach entirely. They bypass the intrinsic factor requirement entirely, and they deliver B12 into circulation at levels that swallowed tablets cannot match regardless of dose. A 2003 study published in the journal Blood confirmed that sublingual B12 was as effective as intramuscular B12 injection, the method used clinically for severe deficiency in raising plasma B12 levels and correcting deficiency symptoms as effective as an injection from a drop under your tongue. The dose, 1,000 micrograms of methylcobalamin daily, delivered sublingually. Hold it under your tongue for 60 seconds before swallowing. Do this every morning consistently for a minimum of 12 weeks before assessing results. B12 rebuilds slowly in tissues, and the effect on melanocyte function follows the hair growth cycle, which moves at approximately 1 centimeter per month. Results at the roots become visible between weeks 8 and 16, depending on your individual hair growth rate. The two companion nutrients that multiply B12's effect. B12 alone addresses the hydrogen peroxide accumulation mechanism, but gray hair after 60 is rarely driven by a single deficiency. It is driven by a cluster of nutritional gaps that compound each other. Two companion nutrients work directly alongside B12 to address the parts of the graying mechanism that B12 cannot reach alone. Companion nutrient 1, folate. Folate is vitamin B9 and it works alongside B12 in the methionine cycle I described earlier. B12 and folate are biochemical partners. The methionine cycle cannot run efficiently without both present simultaneously. When folate is deficient, B12 supplementation produces incomplete results because the cycle it is supposed to support has a second bottleneck that B12 alone cannot fix. A 2016 study in the journal Dermatology and Therapy examined nutritional patterns in women with premature and accelerated graying and found that folate deficiency was present alongside B12 deficiency in a significant proportion of participants. Correcting both deficiencies simultaneously produced superior outcomes to correcting either alone. Folate is found in dark leafy greens, legumes, and fortified foods. But after 60, dietary folate absorption also declines due to reduced stomach acid production. A supplement of 400 micrograms of methylfolate, the active form, not folic acid, which requires conversion and is poorly processed by a significant portion of the population due to a common genetic variation, taken daily alongside your B12 ensures the methionine cycle has both partners it needs to run at full capacity. Complementary nutrient 2, copper. Copper is the mineral that most people have never considered in the context of gray hair, but the enzyme that actually synthesizes melanin inside your melanocytes, tyrosinase, is a copper-dependent enzyme. It cannot function without copper present. Without adequate copper, your melanocytes could have perfect catalase levels, perfect glutathione, perfect B12D, and still be unable to produce melanin because the enzyme that makes melanin requires copper as a structural component. A 2012 study published in the Biological Trace Element Research Journal found significantly lower serum copper levels in individuals with premature graying compared to controls with normal pigmentation. And a 2019 review in the journal Nutrients confirmed that copper deficiency directly impairs tyrosinase activity and melanin synthesis independent of other nutritional factors. Dietary copper is found in organ meats, shellfish, especially oysters, nuts, seeds, and dark chocolate. Most women over 60 eating a standard diet are mildly copper insufficient without realizing it. A supplement of 1 to 2 milligrams of copper bisglycinate, the chelated form with superior absorption, taken daily with your B12 and folate, completes the 3-nutrient protocol that addresses gray hair from every biological angle simultaneously. B12 reduces hydrogen peroxide accumulation and restores the biochemical environment melanocytes need to function. Folate ensures the methionine cycle supporting that environment runs efficiently. Copper gives the melanin synthesizing enzyme the structural component it needs to actually produce pigment when the environment is restored, all three together every day for a minimum of 12 weeks. Now, I want to talk about something that most gray hair content never addresses. The things in your daily life that are actively accelerating the graying process and directly counteracting the protocol I have just given you. Because you can take the right supplements in the right forms at the right doses and still see slower results if these factors are working against you every day. Stay with me because one of them is going to surprise you. The first accelerator is chronic stress, and I do not mean stress. I mean the low-level chronic stress that most women over 60 carry as background noise. The worry that never fully quiets, the sleep that never feels completely restful, the constant sense of doing and managing and holding things together. Chronic stress elevates cortisol. Elevated cortisol directly suppresses catalase production. Less catalase means more hydrogen peroxide accumulation. More hydrogen peroxide accumulation means faster melanocyte shutdown. A landmark 2021 study published in the journal Nature confirmed for the first time in a controlled experimental setting that stress-induced norepinephrine release caused rapid depletion of melanocyte stem cells in hair follicles. The graying was measurable and irreversible in the stress cells within days of the stress exposure. Stress does not just feel like it ages you. It biologically does. Managing chronic stress is not optional for this protocol. It is a biological necessity. 10 minutes of daily deep breathing, a consistent sleep schedule that protects 7 to 8 hours of sleep, and reducing unnecessary commitments that keep your cortisol chronically elevated are not luxuries. They are direct interventions in the hydrogen peroxide accumulation mechanism driving your gray hair. The second accelerator is smoking. Cigarette smoke contains compounds that directly deplete catalase activity in cells and accelerate oxidative damage to melanocytes. A 2013 study in the Italian Journal of Dermatology journal found that smokers were 4 times more likely to experience premature and accelerated graying than non-smokers, even after controlling for age and genetic factors. If you smoke, this single factor may be overwhelming every nutritional intervention you attempt. The third accelerator, and this is the one that surprises people, is excessive caffeine, specifically more than 3 cups of coffee per day. Caffeine at high doses has been shown to interfere with B12 absorption in the intestinal tract and to accelerate B12 excretion through the kidneys. For a population already struggling with B12 absorption due to declining intrinsic factor, this compounding effect is significant. If you are consuming more than 3 cups of coffee daily and supplementing B12 to address gray hair, you may be undermining your supplementation with every additional cup. Reduce to 2 cups daily and space your B12 supplementation at least 2 hours away from your coffee consumption. The fourth accelerator is ultraviolet radiation. UV exposure generates free radicals in the hair follicle tissue that directly damage melanocytes and deplete the antioxidant enzymes protecting them. Women who spend significant time in unprotected sun exposure accelerate melanocyte dysfunction at the follicle level in exactly the way UV accelerates skin aging. The base accelerate wearing a hat outdoors, using a UV protective hair product, and minimizing direct midday sun exposure protects the follicle environment your nutritional protocol is working to restore. I want to be completely honest with you about the timeline because gray hair reversal is one of the slowest visible biological changes you will experience, and unrealistic expectations are the #1 reason women abandon protocols that are genuinely working. In the first 4 weeks, you will likely see nothing visible in your hair. This is not a sign the protocol is not working. Your B12 levels are rebuilding in your tissues. Your methionine cycle is beginning to run more efficiently. Your melanocytes are receiving an improved biochemical environment for the first time in years. But hair grows slowly, and the new hair reflecting these improvements has not yet grown long enough to be visible. By weeks 8 to 12, you may begin to notice at the roots of your hair that new growth looks slightly darker than the gray hair behind it. This is the first visible sign of partial melanocyte reactivation. In some women, it is subtle, a warmer tone at the root rather than dramatic color. In others, it is clearly visible as significantly darker regrowth against gray lengths. Both are signs the protocol is working. By weeks 16 to 24, women who respond most strongly to this protocol, typically those whose graying is most driven by B12 and copper deficiency rather than purely genetic factors, report clearly visible darkening at the roots with each new growth cycle. The hair that was gray does not change color. Gray hair cannot be repigmented after it has grown, but each new hair that grows from a reactivated melanocyte carries more pigment than the gray hair it is replacing. Over many months of consistent new growth, the overall appearance of the hair shifts measurably. The women in my clinic who see the most dramatic results have 3 things in common. They use methylcobalamin sublingually without exception. They add folate and copper consistently alongside it, and they have been gray for fewer than 7 years.